This video will cover the steps on how to configure the ProximVision Advanced Redundancy feature. The redundancy feature allows you to access the ProximVision Advanced server in an uninterrupted way by using two servers where one acts as the active server and the other one acts as a standby server. Whenever the active server goes down, the standby server will act as the active server for seamless access. Okay, a few notes on ProximVision Advanced Redundancy feature. To achieve redundancy, two server machines with similar hardware specifications are required, and also the time settings on the two servers should be in sync, similar. PV Advanced server application should be installed on both machines, which means that you're going to need two separate PV Advanced licenses, okay, two separate licenses. If the Windows firewall is enabled on the server, then add the ICMP PV Advanced services and Postgres database services to the firewall exception list to ensure that the redundancy feature works. The database in server 1 and server 2 will be in sync except for SMTP settings, compaction settings, and trap settings, the SNMP trap receiver. And before starting the server service in server 1, ensure to stop the server service and the monitor service in server 2 if they are already running. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and cover on how to set up, configure ProximVision Advanced for server redundancy. Okay, one of the things that we already covered is that you are going to need two PVMNS licenses with the same amount. Okay, now the process itself it's fairly simple, but a bit time consuming. So to configure the redundancy system, it's actually fairly easy. Just go ahead and log in, click on administration, and then server settings. Okay, we're going to go ahead and enable. Okay, and we're going to go ahead and cover this. It's fairly simple. You're going to use your the IP address for your server 1, IP address for your server 2. You're going to use your common authentication, whatever you want, admin, and then I just typed in public. And then this is going to be a floating IP. This is the IP address that you're actually going to use to configure, to manage the redundancy feature after everything is set up already. Okay, so what I have here is two separate PV Advanced servers. Here's the first one, and here's going to be the second one. Okay, now the first step is actually to go ahead and disable the PV monitor and the PV server in services in the second server. Okay, that's going to be the very first step. So we're just going to go ahead and stop it. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and go over to the first one. We're going to go ahead and type in this information. Now both the server 1 and server 2, they're going to have to match on both servers. Okay, so this is the IP address of this server. This is the IP address of this server over here. I typed in my the admin, and then whatever password I'm going to use, that's going to have to match between the two. And then we're going to use 192.168.1.210. It's just my IP address for my floating IP. Okay, so after that's done, what you're going to do is just going to hit apply. Okay, it's going to tell you that the service is going to have to restart. Just go ahead and click OK. Now the best option is just go ahead and shut down PVMNS. All right, so now what we're going to do is let's go over to the second server. All right, so let's go ahead and restart it. Okay, both monitor and server. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and log in. And we're going to go ahead and configure the second server to match the settings of the first server. Okay, so here we are in the remote server. Okay, in this case it's server number 1. So you can see it's already in standby, and then the second server is in active mode. Okay, so we're going to end up doing the remote server. We're going to go ahead and do the exact same thing as we did. We're going to enter the same IP address of the server 1, remote access of the server 2. We're going to do admin and then whatever IP address you want to put in there, and then you're going to go ahead and put in your floating IP, make sure it matches. Now go ahead and click apply. Now once you click apply, go ahead and shut down the server, okay, and then go into services, and then go ahead and stop both monitor and server. Okay, go ahead and stop both monitor and server. Okay, then what you're going to end up doing is logging back in. Okay, so the way we're going to log back in this particular case is using the remote. Okay, in this case, the host is going to be .210. Remember, that was a floating IP address. Okay, now when we log in, okay, we'll be able to see whatever is happening. Now, because you're connected, in my case, we're connected to server number 2. Okay, if for some reason server number 2 goes out, it's going to take a few seconds for it to switch over back to server number 1. But whatever session you have is going to be lost, because remember, you were initially connected to server number 2, which was in charge of the floating IP. Okay, I don't want to confuse it, but that's how it is. So all you're going to have to do is, if you lose connection and then it switches over back to the original server, or from server 2 to server 1, just go ahead and log back in using the floating IP address, and then you should be able to go back in. And then if for any reason it switches back to from server 1 to server 2, you're going to lose connection again. Okay, and then just go ahead and start your PV Advanced connection one more time, and go ahead and go in by your floating IP. Remember, everything is going to be done by the floating IP address. Okay, and in this particular case, we could just go ahead and verify our connection. Okay, we're good. If there was no connection, there would be a red X over here. Okay, so that's something to look out for. To learn more about Proxim Wireless and our solutions, please visit us at proxim.com or follow us at Twitter at Proxim.